I will start by reading the webcast statement. This council meeting will be webcast, and I remind all those present that their words and actions will be broadcast to a wider audience, and certain conduct is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. Should any person not wish to be recorded, I advise they should leave the meeting room prior to any statements being made. Any defamatory statements made are not the position of council and remain an individual's opinion. Council accepts no responsibility for any defamatory statements, and all liability remains with the person making those remarks. We'll go on to Welcome to Country, and I might ask Councillor Sutherland to do Welcome to Country.
Thank you,
Country.
Mr Mayor. I'd like to say Yama Day Gomoroi, Wallabaganyani, Wunungalawa, Yama Murray, Maramara, Nale Down, Dilia Yanbali, Gary Marius Kaingo, Gomoroi, Yamlinginda, Wunangalawa, Wunangalinginda, Wunangala, Ngayatemwa. So I just want to make sure they acknowledge the country that I'm on, the land of the Gomeroi people, pay my respects to elders, both past and present, who have cared and still care for this country, and make sure that I acknowledge, that ancestral connection that's tied back through our dinga, which is the meat that we all carry on our body that ties us back to the place we belong. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland. I'd ask all of us to stand for the leading prayer and call on Pastor. Is he here? Yes, he is. Yeah.
James.
James, no, I was just looking for you. I couldn't see you, James. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Thanks, man. Almighty God, we thank you for the men and women of Tamworth Regional Council as they serve and lead our city and region. We ask for courage and wisdom for righteous decisions that will nourish and prosper the region. We pray for decisions of integrity, justice and equity to be at the forefront of their deliberations. We thank you for their passion and dedication for our region. We ask you to encourage and empower them through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, James. Councillors, we'll move on to the order of business, and apologies and leave of absence. We have one call for leave of absence tonight, and that is Councillor Helen Tickle, who is away on business. Could I have somebody move that we accept that? Councillor Bett, second, and Councillor Mears, all in favour? Aye. Carried. Councillor, move on to item 2, community consultation. I don't think we have any community consultation tonight. We'll move on to item 3, minutes from the previous meeting. Could I have somebody move that they're a true and correct record? Councillor Cates, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Councillor, do you have any questions? Or councillors, I'll put that as being a true and correct record. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Move on to item 4, disclosure of interest. Any disclosures of interest? There being no disclosures of interest, we'll move on to item 5. Councillors, before us tonight we have a Merrill minute, and I will be moving that Merrill minute, and it is a declaration for statewide road emergency and council to join Local Government New South Wales and the Country Mayors Associations of New South Wales in declaring a statewide emergency. Now, the declaration is an urgent call for the New South Wales and federal government to increase their existing road funding, their road funding commitments in the wake of the storm events and the floods that we've had in the past 12 months. And it comes back at about an estimate cost of about $2.5 billion in road damages and the collapse of the local regional road network. I guess it's a way of us as a council supporting Local Government New South Wales and the country mayors in saying to the government the damage that has happened across the state, and in particular in our, I guess in our local government area, is beyond our capacity financially and physically to fix in a short period of time or to fix probably at all. And we do need extra help in making that happen. To do that, we need a lot of funding, and we will need quite a lot of support from both levels of government. So I guess the Merrill Minute is about declaring the statewide road emergency, but supporting both Local Government New South Wales and the country mayors in their push to get funding for us across the state. And I dare say that the other states in Queensland and Victoria will probably be looking at something similar into the future. But certainly this is just about New South Wales. So I call on my fellow councillors to give me support with this, and that we can talk about this, this statewide road emergency more publicly and offer that to support to those other two organisations. Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I totally support the recommendation, and Councillor Sickle and I went to Hobart for the National Roads Conference, and this is where this motion was mooted by the New South Wales chair of the Local Government Association, and she got all the people from representing the councils across New South Wales. But it was a national conference as well, and when you have a look at the stories, like some of the horror stories that the councillors that are experiencing right up the eastern seaboard and other areas inland in the centre of Australia, it is absolutely beyond the capacity of local government to even maintain a level of service to our community. I know at the local government conference, New South Wales local government conference, we had $50 million that was earmarked for just immediate potholes. But when you look at and they're almost horror stories, some of the road damage that's done to the broader road network in the local government area, and when you see some of the figures, like local government actually looked at after about, I think it's about 85 to 90% of the road network of Australia, and yet we only get about 4 or 5% of the funding. And to be able to cover this sort of damage is just way beyond local government. So absolutely, totally supportive, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Further comments, councillors? Councillor Burke.
Yeah, look, thank you, Mr Mayor, and I think it's very timely you're moving the mayoral minute because of harvest time and the increase in activity of machinery and trucks with the farmers trying to get their crops off. Fortunately, we're getting some fine weather and the harvest has started, but there's actually some damage to our roads in the western part of the council district, where you can't even access that road because the encroachments to bridges has completely collapsed, and that has collapsed from previous work where it's been repatriated only some months earlier. So I really support this motion. I think that if we can get some extra heavy lifting from both state and federal governments to support our endeavours to try and fix our roads and get them back from that emergency crisis, at least so we can transgress our roads, and then to further enhance and repair them going forward, that would be great.
Councillor South.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm fully supportive of the declaration of a statewide road emergency. The local and regional road network is currently horrendous. It is vital to our local industries, as Councillor Burke has mentioned, particularly our ag industry. The damage that has occurred on our roads are disastrous, well over $14 million to fix. We're facing a task beyond the reasonable scope of our local government authority. I strongly support writing to our Prime Minister and Premier requesting immediate action. Thank you.
Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I also rise to support this recommendation. And councillors would be aware that, sometime earlier this year we agreed to allocate around $7 million to maintaining our road network. That was obviously before all the rain events commenced, and I'm sure that all councillors would support this. And I travel a fair bit in my day job around adjoining local government areas, and the impact to them as well is felt just as acutely as we do here, whether it be Gunnedah Shire, Warrumbungles, Liverpool Plains. They're all certainly suffering, and we're not even through summer yet, and we no doubt be suffering more flood events between now and the end of summer, I'm sure. And obviously, like the drought, we now face unprecedented rain events. Look, I'd like to, and I know in our local government area, I've seen a perfect example of where road infrastructure has been damaged, often beyond the capacity of council, and certainly in terms of just a small pothole fix with some of that money that was allocated during the local government conference. A few examples being Langens Lane at Moore Creek, completely washed out. George Street at Moonbi, it's almost gone, but it's certainly impassable. And Moonbi Gap Road, it's impassable at the moment as well. And I know that's on quite sandy soils, but we're not alone. I've seen roads at Barraba also completely gone as well. And so anything that the state and Commonwealth government can do to mitigate the road damage loss would be a great thing. It's also good, I should note, that Gunnedah Shire Mayor Jamie Chaffey has been appointed to the Country Mayors Association as the chair of the Country Mayors Association. He understands only too well, the lot of many of these adjoining local government areas.
Further comments, councillors? There being no further comment to close the debate, I'll just mention that I met with Xavier Martin last week, and he has advised me that New South Wales farmers have approached the federal government to see if they can actually engage the engineering section of the military services to get involved and help some of the councils out west where they've got their roads completely washed away. So that will be interesting to see where that goes. So councillors, I'll put that mayoral minute. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Councillors, we'll move on to, and thank you for that. We'll move on to item 6, notice of motion. There's no notices of motion, so we'll move to open council reports. Item 8, item 7, environment and planning, there is none. Item 8, infrastructure and services. And we'll move to item 8.1, draft Tamworth Regional Entrance Strategy. Could I have somebody move that? Councillor Southwell, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Southwell, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr Mayor. This project is well overdue. The current signs and entryways of our region and towns are a little bit embarrassing, as highlighted in the report. So I'm very much excited to see that this will be going ahead at some stage in the future. The project enriches the landscape and builds community pride. It highlights each of our towns and villages as a vibrant, creative and unique space that they are, and also ties each of our areas together with a consistent theme, which is really, really good to see. As highlighted in the report, it's great for tourists to have a really good first impression of our area, and it's always good as well for local residents to feel that pride of place when they're coming back to or travelling around our region. So I look forward to hearing more about from our executive team around how this will be funded through our budget. Thank you.
Any councillor wish to speak against that recommendation? Further comments from councillors? There being Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and just to back up what Councillor Southwell said, that pride in place is so important. To be able to have a strong sense of identity for all of us is the cornerstone of our well-being, and to be able to have an entrance strategy that's been put together in this fashion, and all credit to Sam Merrickson and the team of council staff who have pulled it together. I think it sends a really strong statement of unity. That as a local government region, we're unified in the way that we're perceived, in the way that we take pride in the place that we live. And to be able to have that flexibility, to be able to really recognise our communities right across the region of their own uniqueness, I think is a great feature. I also just want to point out, along with the signage, I think it's amazing to incorporate nature strips and for it as part of that design principle, and also including public art. Public art is a huge part of our community and really does create a strong sense of identity. And so to be able to have those unique features when coming into towns and communities right across our region, I think is an important message, and strongly support the strategy going up.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland. Any other comments? Further comments? There being no further comments, councillors, I'll put the item 8.1. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move on to item 8.2, Tamworth Regional Traffic Committee, Local Traffic Committee. Could I have a mover? Councillor Betts, seconded Councillor Coates. Councillor Betts, you wish to speak to that? Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any comments on that recommendation? There being no further comments, Councillor Coates.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. There was just a couple of comments. Obviously, there's been some delay in in requesting some of those changes. But I do note in some of the events that requested to have the traffic management considered, they're actually ongoing events. So I'm asking perhaps why does it take so long to get them before council when we know that the events are actually going to occur? They've got a historical, they've got history behind them. And those ones in particular were, I've just written them down. That's number 6 and number 7 on the list. Also, I'm sorry, I haven't got them in front of me.
Thunder Rally.
Yeah, the Thunder Rally, the Moombi Katingal horse event, the triathlon that's at Katingal. And also number 10, which was about the Moore Creek, there was actually no timeframes that I could find anywhere for that no right turn. So whether it's happened or going to happen, I wasn't able to find any timeframes associated with that. So, and I guess one other thing was in terms of the accessible parking in Manila, I think that's a really good idea. I guess just one question with that, do we actually consult with any of the residents out there in terms of whether angle parking versus parallel parking would actually make it easier for people with disabilities to get out of their car and then onto those access points to the footpath? Just given that a lot of the footpaths and the gutters out there are quite high, so people have to park quite a long way from them before they can actually get the car door open to get into their car. So more questions and comments rather than anything else.
Thanks, councillor Coates. In relation to a couple of the items that you mentioned, they've probably been and gone, and you're probably wondering why they've come before us. This is an advisory committee, and those recommendations that come from that committee have to come to council to be ratified. And in some cases, if requests are made and the answer is needed before the next traffic committee, then the staff are delegated to do that, and then it comes to us as an organisation, as a council, then to ratify those decisions based on what the staff are recommending. In terms of the sign, there'll be no time frame on that. Once that's ratified, that will go out as a
Just whenever.
to the staff to be, I guess, erected. And Murray, you might like to make comment on that.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The nature of that one is such that we would want to put it up quite promptly. It's just that it needs to have been formally adopted by council before it becomes a legally enforceable sign. So,
There's a warrant issued or whatever has to be.
yeah, so we would seek to do that fairly quickly because obviously it's affecting school traffic as we speak. So.
Thanks. All good, thank you.
So, councillors, any further comments? There are no further comments. I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour, say aye. Those against, carried. Council will move on to item 8.3, Dungowan Dam and Pipeline Project, Environmental Impact Statement. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that report, please? Moved Councillor Betts, seconded Councillor Mears. Councillor Betts, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, Mr Mayor, yeah, look, great report, and we had as councillors had the opportunity to go and hear a first-hand summary of the EIS by the people, what is it, Department of Water and Industry or something like that? Planning, yes, and they change their names once a week, sort of in government departments, as I know. There's a lot of clarification there, but I'm totally in support of the Dungowan Dam. And one of the highlights that really came to the fore today was the fact that the 22.5 gigalitre dam, while it's perceived to be only 22.5 gigalitres, it will be full for a lot longer than any other dam. If we have a dam of, as they said, 60 gigalitres, it wouldn't be filled as often, but the ability, even if it was, we could not use, as a community, the water in excess of around about the 22 to 23 to 5 gigalitres. So this one is, to me, an absolute necessity moving forward, because it does have a very, very good secure water supply, especially when Terrible Billy is added into that Dungowan catchment. And the other thing that I see is that we have an opportunity to challenge and have input into the water sharing plan, because the water sharing plan is fundamentally flawed. As we found out in the last drought, the actual carriage loss, bringing water into the city, down the river, you basically lose as much again as you need. And that's carried into the aquifer, and that really needs to be addressed, because if you want to genuinely increase Tamworth's water security, they need to look at the water sharing plan. And the other thing that's not in this proposal, the EIS, is the fact that they haven't included the pumped hydro. And as we're moving forward into the zero carbon emissions, and those deadlines are being brought in on a far tighter timeframe, it is absolutely, I think, imperative that we get that looked at as well. And it's a government decision, they need to do that, but I think we should have input into that to get them to do that, because we're at the bottom of the green energy zone, the wind and the solar at the New England, and if it was a pumped hydro scheme there, it would be a huge battery and a huge benefit for power for our region. So totally support the recommendation. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, councillor Betts. Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation 8.3? Further comments on 8.3? Councillor Southwood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to make a few comments on this item, I guess, in terms of the Dungowan Dam itself and the pipeline. The EIS points out a number of key facts. So, as everyone is aware, although it feels quite distant in our mind, that in 2019 we were only 12 months away from running out of water in Chaffey Dam. The thing that we've learnt throughout this process in looking at options for our water security is that we are really limited with what options that we do have, and this is highlighted in the report. The new Dungowan Dam and the pipeline is really the only option that develops additional storage to improve water security and resilience to climate change for the region. Should the project not proceed, it is expected that the Tamworth's growth aspirations will be heavily constrained, and potentially TRC would need to focus its efforts on just retaining its existing population. This is not consistent with the government's strategic vision and our own vision of Blueprint 100 to set Tamworth up as a major jobs, housing and economic hub for northern New South Wales. We cannot make it rain, but we can do a better job at capturing water when it does. I encourage the community to advocate for the Dungowan Dam, as without further investment we will have increased vulnerability to a changing climate and prolonged periods of drought. I'd also really like to commend our Director of Water for pulling together this report, Bruce Logan. It's very comprehensive. It also highlights a few limitations with the EIS, which has been highlighted today, which we had a workshop this afternoon, which was very good. So thank you to Bruce and the water team for all the efforts and work that's been done on this.
Councillors, further comments? Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I won't add anything in terms of what my fellow councillors have said, other than to just say that I fully support that we lodge a submission in regards to this EIS. But I also encourage the community to review it and make comment as well. I think that's really important to remember. Thank you.
Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I think in regards to the conversation at Dungowan Dam, one of the conversations around the environmental impact, and so to have such a comprehensive environmental impact statement come forward, I think well over 5,000 pages, so thank you for the Director, Ms Bruce Logan, for sharing a summary of that. I'm sure you had fun driving through the pages. One thing I want to point out is that identifying the impacts on hydrology, on waste, on our social impacts, and also what they call terrestrial impacts, which is the impact it has on the animals and inhabitants of the river and the ecosystem around it. One thing that I'm pleased to see throughout this is proactive measures that are put in place to open up our fish passage across the Peel and Dungowan rivers, which would extend, the movement of fish up our rivers to a distance of somewhat around 95 kilometres. So making sure that our fish, who have every right to live in the river and swim in the river and travel upstream as they've always done, being able to work with council in a in a practical and meaningful way to be able to provide some alternative for fish to be able to travel upstream. I think it's a great impact that's been identified in this statement.
Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I certainly agree with the sentiment of this report. There's a few things in the EIS, such as it's focused on developing new capacity and therefore doesn't shift the burden between stakeholders within the Peel Valley or the Namoi region. Unfortunately, I don't think anything that we do in terms of water infrastructure is not going to impact someone at any specific time. And I'm disappointed that options such as pipeline from Keepit Dam to Tamworth weren't more acutely investigated. It's a 440 gigalitre existing dam, or Split Rock Dam, 330 gigalitres, both full at the moment. I realise that, in fact, the purpose originally of Keepit Dam was flood mitigation, and it's probably done its job up until at the time that it filled. But I think that it's crazy in this day and age that we don't make use of existing dam storages, considering now the delays in terms of Commonwealth funding and any possible future issues that may arise next year after the state election. So I think that we've still got a long way to go with a new Dungowan Dam, but there are sort of alternatives that I wish the government would have investigated as well.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Berg.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And look, Councillor Rodder talked about flood mitigation with regards to Keepit Dam, and it's interesting to note that the Director of Water and Waste, Bruce Logan, sent out an email to us with a photo showing the 25 gigalitres of water that went through the 6.3 gigalitres current Dungowan Dam in one day. To think that dam, if it had been built, would have been filled in one day is a phenomenal thing to think of what a security of water could look like in capturing water in these flood events to be able to get us through the next 5, 10, 15 years is an opportunity already missed. And hearing today from the department where we visited, they're still very focused on the fact that the dam needs to happen, and I think that they believe with the work that they're doing, and I hope for their sake that they're not doing work for a dam that won't happen, that sometime in the future, and it will be well into the future, they were indicating probably as long as 6 years before we actually get the thing operational. But thankfully this work's being done, and we're progressing, and marching in a direction that means that all the legwork has been done, and we get to a point where in a few years' time we'll be probably fighting over an extra 0.2 or 0.3 of $1 billion to build the thing because we didn't make the decision to build it now.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Betts, you want to close the debate?
I'll close the debate if I can, Mr Mayor, as the mover of the motion. Just in summary, why I'm really supportive of the Dungowan Dam, because I've been having water as one of my passions for, ever since I've been in local government, because I've identified that, without a secure water supply, communities can't grow, and the health of the community socially and economically just doesn't happen. And one of the reasons that I feel the absolute need to support Dungowan Dam is that it's new water. Keepit Dam, Split Rock Dam, yes, they've got huge capacities and they've been filled to overflowing, but it's over-allocated. There's just no free. To buy water out of that system to get some high security water is an absolute, well, it's almost impossible because it's absolutely over-allocated, whereas this 22 gigalitres of a secure water supply, and as Councillor Burke said, the dam basically would have filled overnight. And if you think about the 6.3 gigalitre dam that's there now, and it's been over about the last 12 months, has supplied all the water for Tamworth. Yes, it's been a wet time, but basically all the water, it hasn't got down, I don't think, below about 90%, if I could be there. And that means that a 6.3 gigalitre dam in a reasonable time covers us. We then have a 22.5 gigalitre dam with an added catchment, Terrible Billy, and also 104 gigalitres in Chaffey Dam. So I think it's just a no-brainer that it's got to go ahead. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, councillors. Well, that closes the debate, so I'll put all those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Councillors, we'll move on to the next item, which is numbered 12.4, but should be numbered 8.4. It was going to go into closed council, but it's moved forward, so that's just, the number hasn't been changed. So we'll move on to 8.4, which is Thomas Foods International request for a reduction of trade waste. Could I have somebody move that? Councillor Southwell. Seconded, Councillor Cate. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Southwell?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I guess just a couple of quick comments on this is that we must ensure compliance with our trade waste standards so that it's fair and equitable for all, and to ensure we are protecting our environment. Council adopted the liquid trade waste policy in 2007, so 15 years ago. We need to be consistent with our own policies, or why should we adopt them? Furthermore, we will be sending a message to dischargers that compliance with the trade waste agreement is not expected at all times if we were to agree to a reduction in these charges. However, I will say that I do feel for Thomas Foods. In their letter that they sent to us, there was obviously quite a few issues that they had with some equipment breaking down. There was obviously some lag time, I think about 2 weeks before that testing came back as well. So I do feel for them in this situation. They had quite a number of things happen, which has caused these fees to be quite high. However, we do need to be consistent with our standards, I believe, and make sure that we are protecting our environment as well. Thank you.
Council, anyone wish to speak against that recommendation, 8.4? There being no one wishing to speak against, any further comments, councillors?
Yes.
Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I totally agree with Councillor Southwell, and I think this also highlights the importance of organisations of having their own internal. They shouldn't just be relying on us to provide them with feedback when they're not meeting the requirements. They should be, but it's an opportunity for them to look at their systems and actually make some improvements. And I don't feel that council as an organisation should be providing any support for them in this case, although it has been a difficult time. I think we need to make sure that we send that message that, number one, we won't accept anything that's going to be damaging to the environment, but number two, it's up to the organisation to make sure that they've got things in place to ensure that it doesn't happen from their end.
Councillors, further comment? Councillor Berg.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I support this, not allowing the reduction to happen. There is an integral part of these large business operators to actually have their own detection operating and functional at all times, so that they can pick up on it when it happens and rectify it almost immediately. And to blame council in saying we didn't get information until several weeks post that it wasn't to the standards required is really problematic. And I think it's a warning to all of our abattoir and high water users that they need to have their systems in place and they need to be functioning and they need to be aware of breaches before they become a major issue for them. Yep. And then subsequent financial impost to them.
I might ask Mr. Logan to make some comment.
Mr Mayor, if I the reason the council samples trade waste, not for the benefit of the discharger, but to work out how much the charges are going to be. So we sample trade waste to say that in the last period, this is what the average quality of the waste has been. This is how your charges will be levied. This is how we're going to calculate the charges. So it's wrong for them to wait for our advice to say that your charges are so high because you've been sending poor quality effluent to our sewer. They need to have their own systems in place that detect the problems before they turn up in our system when we're trying to work out what their charge is going to be.
Which, can I say, it sounds like they are.
Through the Mayor?
Sorry, through you, Mr Mayor. It sounds like they are in their letter. That's what they did say. They are putting those in place, didn't they? Now.
Yeah, they are. They should have had a long time ago.
Further comments? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Councillors, we'll move on to item 9, governance and strategy. 9.1, could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Coates, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Coates, you wish to speak to that?
Just to make a brief comment, thank you, Mr Mayor. And I guess that at the moment things are a little bit difficult in terms of trying to determine what's going to happen in the interest rate markets, etc. And with that possibility of a recession, when interest rates are likely to go down. So it's a difficult time, I think, from that point of view. So to me, it makes sense to actually have investments that are longer term with a fixed return, and maybe that provides us with some stability in terms of investment returns and therefore, income. And I imagine that from that perspective, it makes budgeting a little bit easier, although we may have that small loss in return. And so given that the Westpac investments are our 40% of our investments, I think actually moving them on to another place is probably a wise move. And I just want to thank Cheryl and her staff for, once again, a very good report. Thank you.
Councillors, anyone wish to speak against that report? Further comments on that report? I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Carried. We'll move on to item 9.2, update on sale of land front paid rates. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Betts, seconded Councillor Mears. Councillor Betts, you wish to speak there? Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Further comments on that recommendation? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against? Carried. Item 9.3, Tamworth Regional Consolidated Financial Reports. Can I have someone to move that report, please? Move Councillor Mears, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Mears, you wish to speak to that? Anyone wish to speak against that report? Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, councillors, I'll put that recommendation in 9.3. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. We'll move on to item 9.4, annual operational plan budget variation. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor Betts, seconded Councillor Coates. Councillor Betts, you wish to speak to that? Anyone wish to speak against that report? Anyone wish to make comments? There being no further comments, councillors, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Councillors, we'll move on to the next one, 9.5, quarterly budget review statements. Could I have someone move 9.5? Councillor Southwell. Councillor Burke, do you wish to speak to that? Councillor Southwell? Anyone wish to speak against that? Any further comments? Councillor Betts.
Yeah, just very, very quickly, Mr Mayor. I know all these reports go through fairly quickly, and they're significant reports to our council. But all the councillors around this table spend the time when they get the information for these reports and get the information from staff, any queries or questions they've got, and it's all clarified. So it's a very, very robust process that we go through to actually come to this final tick of approval. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against? Councillor?
No, not against.
Make comment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just add on to Councillor Betts' comment, just really a fan of the way that this report is set out and laid out to be able to make sure that the information is really clear and easy to understand, especially when we're talking around some really significant increases in income and also increases in expenditure. And yeah, definitely credit to the staff for pulling it together. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. We'll move to item 9.6, Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee. Could I have a mover and a second? And move Councillor Coates, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Coates?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just briefly, once again, we had quite a interesting meeting at the last ARIC meeting, and I think probably of interest, there were a couple of key points, and they were related to outstanding and overdue items on the list, because obviously there's an ongoing audit process that happens with them. The first one was fraud and corruption framework. The second one was a non-compliance with the procurement policy. However, what I want to tell you is the good side of that is that council is actually working on addressing those issues. That there's been a fraud and corruption prevention framework that's been developed, and also the policy associated with that has been reviewed and updated. That in particular will be presented to the executive team towards the end of the year. The procurement process is also under review, and I believe that the end of year audit in that is almost complete as well. So there's been a lot being done in terms of addressing those concerns that were raised by the ARIC committee. One of the other points in the list, and it was number 67, not that that means much to anyone, but it actually speaks to determining some sort of reporting system or format to provide some feedback to executive and councillors. And this actually come before us. I think one of the councillors raised it recently about how do we know what's actually happening? Can we get a little bit more feedback on what's going on? And what they were discussing was including an overview of major projects, so things that are actually happening, whether they're on time, are they on budget, if there's budget overruns, and any other issues that are actually impacting on the project. So, and if we're not meeting parameters with that, why not, and what can we do about it? So I guess I just wanted to report back, particularly in that area of concern that some of the councillors had, that there is work being done in that space to address the issues that were raised. So, thank you.
Councillors, anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments from councillors on that recommendation? There being no further comments, I'll put item 9.6. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. We'll move on to item 9.7. I know this is a long way away, councillors, or it seems a long way away, but it goes very quickly. 9.7. Could I have somebody move that recommendation, please? Councillor Coates, seconded Councillor Mears. Councillor Coates, you wish to make comment?
No, thank you.
Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation there, which is something that we've done in the past for us? So nobody wish to speak against. Any further comments? Councillor Beck.
Just a comment. Yeah, no, we've got no option, and it's the best way. But it's another unfunded mandate. You know, it's basically the state government putting on a cost to local government. And I can remember when the elections were first. When I got on local government, it was nowhere near this, and it's gone up far more than the CPI and the compounded aspect of the CPI. And last year was $358,000 to conduct the election here in Tamworth Region, and I've got no doubt that in 2024 it's going to be significantly more than that. It's an amount of money that's unfunded and that local government have got to put in, and yeah. Nothing we can do about it, but it's just an unfunded mandate that takes away other services that we can give to our community.
Council, does anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments on the recommendation? Councillor Berg.
I just think it's very important that we actually do outsource it rather than trying to do it internally, which some councils have done in the past. But hopefully there'll be a reduction in the pre-poll period, which I think is going to happen in the upcoming state election from 2 weeks down to 10 days, I think is the number. And there could be some savings delivered in terms of manning and conducting the supervision of polling booths. So who knows? Hopefully it won't be too much dearer than 2021.
Any further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll put that recommendation, 9.7. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. We'll move to 9.8, integrated planning and reporting. I'll have a mover and a seconder, please. Moved Councillor Coates, seconded Councillor Southwood. Sorry. Councillor Coates, you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Only just to make the comment that this is a really, really comprehensive report, and I like to thank Anna and her staff for the work that's actually been put into it. And the way it's presented actually enables people to go to the target area, so they don't have to troll through a whole lot of things that perhaps they're not interested in. So they can actually just go and have a look at the achievements, or they can go to the section that talks about legislated requirements, or audited financial statements, and I think that makes it far more user-friendly, although there is still a lot of pages for people to look through, over 200. But I actually encourage, once again, the community to take a look at it, because it can inform them as to actually what council has been doing, how we've achieved that, and, you know, what our plans are. So, once again, a great report.
Thanks, councillor Coates. Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments on that recommendation? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Councillors, we'll move on to item 10, community services. We have one item there, 10.1, Tamworth Regional Community Safety Working Group. Councillor Roddy, you wish to, as the chair, move that?
Councillor Southwell, Mr Mayor, would like to move that. I'll second it.
I'd like to move an alternative motion, please, which the girls have.
So you'd like to move it, okay, well, let's do it.
Probably for the benefit of people online, Mr Mayor, you might read the new recommendation. There you go.
Oh.
Just the second part, it's the document too.
The chair nearly threw me.
Would you like me to read, Mr Mayor?
If you read.
So, councillors, the amendment is to Roman numeral 2 of the printed recommendation, and it's to write to service station operators within the Tamworth local government area that operate 24 hours, 7 days a week, seeking their cooperation in ensuring that fuel pumps are turned off to require prepayment of fuel after 11:30 p.m. in an effort to better manage late night crime.
We all understand that? Councillor Southwell, do you wish to speak to the?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I'll just highlight the small change that we are making is that the original motion had that we requesting that fuel pumps are turned off, and the change that we're making is really around asking that a prepayment is made to the fuel rather than turning them off. Simply to avoid, you know, it's got the same intent as the original motion, so there's nothing really too big there, but just highlighting that we'd like to write to them to say, please prepay, so that we can avoid the issue of people driving away with fuel and stealing fuel from our service stations. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Rodder. Councillors, anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments on the recommendation? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, it was a simple amendment. It was, I think the intention of the original recommendation wasn't to thwart businesses that sold fuel at that time of the night. It was in fact to first of all to, I guess, limit the distances which people in stolen vehicles could travel. Secondly, limit the theft of fuel, which often occurred going into a stolen vehicle. And thirdly, limit the opportunity of people that may have had stolen ATM cards buying fuel to put in a stolen vehicle. So there's a number of petrol stations around our local government area that are 24-hour that already have this sort of mechanism in place where you prepay for fuel before you take it, particularly at night, late night and early morning. But this is just I guess, a simple request to make of those petrol stations that don't currently do that to thwart the efforts of those that are stealing vehicles in getting away with and continuing on with their joy rides around the city or the local government area generally.
Council, does anyone make further comment? Councillor Betts.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, it needs to be, I think, highlighted, the graffiti that's going on around town, and the cost to repair it or rectify it is $1,200. That's a lot attributed to one of our staff members, Gino Taberi, and the work that Gino does in conjunction with the police does save this community a lot of money and a lot of unwanted art around it. It's just something that needs to be commended, because that hard work normally goes unnoticed, and I just want to recognise that through you, Mr Mayor. Thanks.
Further comments, councillors? Councillors, we have a recommendation in front of us. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Councillors, we'll move from there on to item 11, which is reports to be considered in closed council. And before I ask the General Manager Before I move into closed council, I'll ask the general manager, is there any items that have been raised to you that, where people think they should be held in open council?
No, Mr Mayor.
Councillors, can I have a motion to move into closed council? Councillor Pete Berg, second to Councillor Mears. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
So moving into closed council, I'll have to ask all those in the gallery to please vacate the room.
Yeah, is there anybody out there?
I thought he was leaving.
Well, they probably had walked off the end of the veranda.
They're not out there, they're not out there. Are we back live?
Good to go? Mr General Manager, if you can comment on,
Oh, there's nobody.
That's somebody out there, they're not out there.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Council, this is a report of the closed session of the ordinary council meeting held on the 22nd November 2022. In closed council, you considered 3 items, 12.1 through 12.3, and for each of those items, you adopted the recommendations as per your business papers.
council is happy to move to accept that? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Councillors, that brings us to an end of this meeting and we've actually finished in good time.